Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Todd Zagorek, and I'm on the Sunday Services team. So if there's anything about Sunday services that you don't particularly like, maybe sometime during coffee hour or another time you could say something to Sam McCoy. This would be a good time to silence your phones if you've not done that already. Thank you for joining us this morning. You are an essential part of our service, whether you're here in the fellowship hall or joining us online. Whether this is your first time with us or you've been coming here for decades, you're an important part of our service, and we're stronger because of you. So thank you. As we gather here this morning, we traditionally acknowledge respectfully that we are on the traditional lands of the Pagusset people. And before we get started, I invite you to greet your neighbors, say hello, introduce yourself, wave to somebody across the room. We have just a few announcements today before we get started. Next week, Sunday, August 25th, Reverend Tony Lorenzen and Reverend Sierra Marie Jafeo will lead a service called Powered by Love, a backpack blessing service. So you're invited to bring your backpacks or your journals or your tablets or your laptops. They will be blessed and perhaps healed if they're not working right. In 3 weeks from today, September 8th, following our homecoming service, we will have a homecoming picnic. And you should have received an email with an invitation and a sign-up sheet, or you can contact Heather Smith for more information. We need your help making some flyers available to families who might be interested in experiencing UUCD. We have a program flyer and a fall fair flyer for families in the foyer. They're available in the foyer, and please take as many as you need and post them in places where you think families might see them, because we'd like to invite them to join us. This morning, our service presenter is our very own Stanley Heller. And Stanley has been working for decades for peace in the Middle East. Stanley leads the Middle East Crisis Committee of Connecticut. He is also the administrator of a peace advocacy organization called Promoting Enduring Peace. He's a member of the human rights organization Jewish Voice for Peace. He's written articles and a book on history and political affairs. Stanley hosts a TV news magazine called The Struggle Video News. After studying history at Yale and Southern Connecticut State University, Stanley has taught social studies and computer science at high schools and middle schools for 40 years. We're lucky to have Stanley in the congregation, and I very much look forward to what he has to say today. Please join me now in the words of our chalice lighting affirmation. Let's do the affirmation and then I'll light the chalice. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. And please rise in body or spirit now for our hymn of welcome. This is my song, number 159. I don't see any children here in the fellowship hall, but they may be joining us online. So please join in our children's affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists. We're people with open minds, loving hearts, helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. And now we'll have our story, which is an alphabet book called P is for Palestine. Stanley, did you want to introduce that or? Yeah. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Stanley Heller. As a stole, I'm wearing a kufiya, which is a Palestinian farmer's scarf, which became a Palestinian symbol. Today's story will be about Palestine. So we have 2 slides to show you, so you'll know about the location of the area of the Palestinians. So on this world map, you see the arrow, and then next is a close-up. And you see the Mediterranean and the Jordan River as the boundaries. This is just the Palestinian home area. And now we'll show the video. P is for Palestine.
P is for Palestine, a Palestine alphabet book by Goldberg Bashi. Can we sing the ABC anywhere? With a woolly bear or on thin air? Yes, let's align. We're going on an alphabet adventure to Palestine. A is for Arabic, my tongue, a language that's the 4th biggest ever sung. B is for Bethlehem, my birthplace, with the best betlawas. Put it on a plate, not in a vase. C is for Christmas, coziest in Jesus Christ's country, with the crunchiest candy. D is for Debka, a delightful dance. Daddy's done it, even in Sundance. E is for Eid. It means festival, like the Muslim Eid al-Fitr, when we eat enticing eats, get excited over gifts, and enjoy seeing our extended families. F is for Falafel, fresh fast food, every day's good fuel. G is for Gaza, a city like Mombasa, without any plazas but full of generous casas. H is for Handala, hear his hellos, he is our hero. I is for Intifada. Intifada is Arabic for rising up for what is right, if you are a kid or a grown-up. J is for Jesus. Jesus was born in my hometown, Bethlehem, not in Jamestown. K is for kufiya, the best kind you can hang on a hook in Hebron Souk. L is for Lebna. Lebna is like yogurt. I eat it for lunch wearing my loafer. M is for Miftah, key of return, Mama's mama and my Jidda's mama, for which I yearn. N is for Nazareth, or Nasra in Arabic. Nestled in the north with narrow lanes, Sundays are its noisiest days. O is for olives and orange orchards, yummy fruits of our land, good for me, for you, and all of our friends. P is for Palestine, precious to me and my people, evergreen like a forest pine. Q is for Quds, home to the picturesque Qubat al-Sakhara, Dome of the Rock, where we quietly go for our daily barakah. R is for Ramallah, where rainbows come after the rain, inshallah. S is for Souk, a market where shetwes shimmer and sparkle. T is for thob, a traditional dress with tetris, embroidered pieces. Take time to make with thousands of tiny threads, if you please. U is for and ukht. Ummi is my mother, ukhti is my sister. Our language is Arabic, but we speak English too. How about you? V is for vine. My favorites are grapevines. David picks them and makes warakat tawali, oh so divine. W is for wallahi, I swear by God. My writing teacher says that her name is Wad. Isn't that odd? X is for xylophone. Exercise playing it for depka, just as you do on a saxophone. Y is for yalla. Stop yawning and come see the village of Yabla. Z is for za'atar, full of zest and must have in our kitchen's chest.
Two small observations as we shift away from video back to a slide. That book is banned in many parts of this country because it talks about Palestinians. They'll pick on the word intifada or this or that. But, and the second thing is that you'll notice they pronounce what we say, Gaza. It's much more like Gaza. I hope I said it somewhat accurately. Okay, so now we go on to the next part of the service, the singing of This Little Light of Mine.
It's time for our shared milestones, silent and spoken. This is a time of coming together as a community in quiet contemplation. Through this sharing, we remind each other that we're all in this together, this sometimes painful and sometimes wonderful human experience. Together, may we create a heart space for seeking and granting forgiveness, a place where we may put and share grief and loss, as well as healing and hope. A time for giving thanks and offering gratitude for blessings, great and small. During this time, please avoid announcements and political statements. If you're with us online, please write your milestones in the chat and I will read them aloud. So let's begin with our silent milestones. If you'd limit a silent meditation, and Carl will then bring us back with Spirit of Life.
Ahmad Hamdan, who is an organic chemist and Palestinian activist from Brookfield, will do the reading.
Good morning, everyone. This poem is titled If I Must Die by Rafat Al-Arir. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad, who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell. Not even to his flesh, not even to himself. Sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. Rafat Al-Arir published this poem on November 1st, 2023, and he was killed in an Israeli airstrike about a month later on December 6th, 2023, alongside, I want to get this correct, alongside his brother, his sister, and 4 of his nephews. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed a couple more entries in the chat that I'd like to mention. From Nancy Hirschhatter, celebrated Jerry's birthday, visiting old friends in Park Slope yesterday. Wonderful day. Long drive, though. And from Joanne Davidson, congratulations, Dale and Jonathan, Margaret and Keith. I think we all echo those sentiments. When you give your time and energy to this congregation and you donate financial support, you are giving gifts to each other. There are multiple ways to give. Here in the fellowship hall, the plates will be passed. Online, you can use the QR code that appears on the screen, or you may at any time send a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. And thank you very much for your generosity.
from a poem by Palestinian Hanan Ashrawi called From the Diary of an Almost 4-Year-Old. Tomorrow, the bandages will come off. I wonder, will I see half an orange, half an apple, half my mother's face, with my one remaining eye? In last week's program booklet, where today's topic was introduced, it was mentioned that I would try to answer two questions. How can we understand or try to understand what Palestinians are going through and what we must do about it? I'd like to show you a dozen or so photos of Palestinians. All the families and individuals shown in these pictures were killed over the last 10 months by Israeli bombs, drones, or artillery. I've read about wars for many decades and can't think of any example where the report is repeated over and over again that this man was killed along with 5, 7, 15, or 30 members of his family. And just Friday, 18 members of a family were killed. Next, I'm sorry, if you could go back one to the journalist. Over 150 journalists have been killed. In 10 months, more than in all the years of the Vietnam War. Many were targeted with their families. In the milestones, I've talked many times about an associate of promoting enduring peace named Anas Arafat from northern Gaza. This Facebook post sums things up pretty well. Half his house was bombed. 22 members of his family were martyred. He, his heavily pregnant wife and daughter, lived in a car for 4 days, whilst we, many people, tried to get support to him. The support was refused due to the dangerous location. The remaining part of his home was bombed. Displaced many times. He has had no access to his needed regular medication, including insulin, and throughout has supported his community to the very best of his ability with donations. This photo is of vegetables from northern Gaza. It would cost a few dollars here in the US. Anas says that now in northern Gaza, this lot would cost more than $200. He says no one can afford it. The good news is that as of yesterday, Anas was still alive. Now, photos of artwork by Palestinians. Before I talk about the AIW, the Act of Immediate Witness, I have to explain what the body is which created it. The Unitarian Universalist Association is a group of 1,000 UU congregations. The General Assembly that approved the AIW was held online with 3,400 people participating. And Margaret Henderson and perhaps others from this congregation represented us. The AIW about Palestinians is rather long. I'll mention just highlights. It starts. Our Unitarian Universalist faith draws on the moral imperative of radical love, and despite all odds, calls upon us to uphold a world where liberation is real and we all thrive. So there's a commitment to come back to actual liberation. Later it says, today we recognize that Zionism is increasingly intertwined with supremacy and nationalism, which our faith has consistently rejected as unjust and discriminatory. Zionism, this idea that there would be a Jewish state in place of the existing society, is properly seen as a type of white nationalism. Zionism is an idea that Jews would dominate a country with the native population either agreeing to be permanently submissive or to face expulsion. The resolution mentions the groups within the UU calling for solidarity with that native population, the Palestinians. Black Lives of UU, diverse revolutionary Unitarian Universalist multicultural ministries, Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, UU College of Social Justice, Unitarian Universalists for Justice in the Middle East, Unitarian Universalist Association senior leadership, and thousands of UU religious professionals, lay leaders, and congregants. The resolution calls for the UUA to join the apartheid-free movement, which is a campaign to expose the brutal discrimination against Palestinians from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and to act against it. It calls for a permanent end to the fighting and the release of all captives. By using the word all, it means not only those of the 250 people taken to Gaza that are still in Palestinian custody, which is now about 110 people, but also the Palestinians taken by Israel on the West Bank. It isn't well known, but the Israeli authorities have arrested thousands, perhaps 4,000 Palestinians on the West Bank since October 7th. As of March, 200 teenagers under 18 were included. By the way, a responsive resolution that was not part of the AIW was also adopted at the Assembly. It specifically calls for immediate release of all Hamas-held hostages. The AIW concludes with 4 points under the title Organizing and Advocating. The first is engage with Palestinian-led groups and coalitions supporting liberation. There are many, including the national group, the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. There is a Solidarity Coalition here in Connecticut, and there is the American Muslims for Palestine. The second, sign, amplify, and carry out the Apartheid-Free Communities Pledge. The third reads, support boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel and corporate enablers, and end U.S. military aid to Israel until it ceases its policies and practices of apartheid, military occupation, settler colonialism, and genocide. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that one. Boycott is a refusal to buy from Israeli institutions involved in the war or the apartheid. Boycott has been used by the Irish against landlords, black South Africans against the apartheid system there, and Jews against Hitler. Divestment means to sell off financial instruments like State of Israel bonds and stocks and bonds of Israeli companies. By the way, the Connecticut Treasury has $113 million in those stocks and bonds. Ending military aid to Israel is a matter of stopping the yearly grant of $3.8 billion that allows Israel to buy every conceivable modern weapon, like the missile that killed the wife and newborn twins of Mohammed Abu al-Qumsan, or the US-made GBU-39 that killed 100 people in the ruined school last week. It further means opposing the special or emergency grants like the $12.5 billion sent to Israel last winter. Settler colonialism is a plan to replace the native population with settlers. While it was unclear that it was Israeli policy in the first decades after the country's establishment, it's pretty obvious today with the daily raids in the West Bank and the elaborate plans being spun for Gaza. It's clear now that settler colonialism is an apt phrase. Genocide, the deliberate killing of a significant percentage of a population, had not been used by international bodies with regard to Israeli conduct, but now is used often since the International Court of Justice's pronouncement of last winter. The fourth point reads, protect the freedom and safety of solidarity activists by supporting protests and opposing legislation and policies that restrict First Amendment rights. This is quite relevant in Connecticut. 26 UConn students are still facing charges for refusing to leave their peaceful encampments on campus. They were charged with first-degree criminal trespass. The maximum penalty for that is 364 days in prison. So you've heard about what the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association asks you to do. I suggest that a committee be set up of those who want to work on this AIW. For those interested, I'll have a sign-up sheet after the service. What actually could be done? What could make a difference? We could start with something easy, arrange trips to the wonderful Palestine Museum US, the first Palestinian museum in the Western Hemisphere, a fine art museum just north of New Haven in Woodbridge. The congregation could read over and join the Apartheid-Free Communities Pledge. It could create a book club that would read novels and nonfiction written by and about Palestine. It could join with other denominations like the United Church of Christ, the Methodists, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and even sections of evangelicals who are in turmoil about what Israel is doing and issue joint statements. It could take a hard look at what the Connecticut Treasury is doing with its investments of public employee and teacher pension money. You could find out what those other Unitarian committees who sponsored the AIW are about and cooperate with them. It could take part in what John Lewis called good trouble, rallies, demonstrations, and marches to oppose the genocide and the apartheid, and much else. I'll end with a few lines from a poem by Remy Kanazi from his book, Before the Next Bomb Drops. Palestine stays under a microscope, always communal, never ours. It is exhausting struggle, liberation, a campaign, a Facebook post, an infographic, constantly searching for the right words to say, the right message to bring, when all I want is to feel present in this space, take in this breath, and exist here, if only for a moment. Join us now in the hymn of celebration, We'll Build a Land.
Thank you, Stanley, for those important words and images. Thank you, Ahmad, for sharing with us that beautiful and powerful poem with such a tragic epilogue. Please join me now in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
For a postlude, I've chosen Bella Ciao. It's originally a song of Italian peasants who were employed by owners of rice farms, and the song complains about mistreatment. But in World War II, it became a song of the partigiani, the partisans who fought Mussolini and then the Nazi occupation. We'll have the words up on the screen, which are actually quite sad, about a man who feels his doom is approaching. But in the decades since the war, it's become a song of defiance and solidarity. You can sing or listen as you like. Now, Bella Ciao, beautiful goodbye.